Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? Like you're going through the motions, but your soul is screaming for something more? That's exactly where Monika Sawyer found herself, smack dab in the middle of a successful corporate career and a cancer diagnosis. Most people would crumble, but Monica, she did something radical. She ditched the 9 to 5 grind and embraced her intuition, becoming an intuitive life coach and healer. Now she helps other women like you tap into their inner power to create lives of purpose and abundance. In this episode, Monica shares her journey, revealing how she overcame not one but two life altering challenges. She'll give you practical strategies to reconnect with your intuition, ditch the self doubt, and create a career and a life you truly love. Listen and get ready to be inspired.
Welcome to Making Change with Your Money, a podcast that highlights the stories and strategies of women who experienced a big life transition and overcame challenges as they redefined financial success for themselves. Now, here's your host, certified financial planner, Laura Rotter.
Welcome, Monica, to the Making Change with Your Money podcast.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm really happy to be here today with you.
I'm looking forward to our conversation. We'll see where it takes us. Um, I will start as I always do with the question, what was money like, Monica, in your family growing up?
I actually come from underprivileged family. I come from underprivileged family. My family immigrated from Poland to America between 85 and 91. So I have a little bit of a mixed experience and actually pretty hot issue right now in this country.
Yes.
So it was pretty tough growing up in communist Poland. He's still kind of dealing with some of the post-war rebuild and starting up, and so that took actually more years than people realize. You think that a war happens and a few years later everything's fine. No, it takes decades, and then I think it's whole economical and political positioning of Poland wasn't as favorable, so even that slowed things down. So it was actually very tough for my family and really tough for me, not actually having most simple things growing up, like functioning plumbing and bathroom, and which we take
Wow.
for granted. So that was very tough, having only cold water in the house. And imagine washing yourself every morning with ice cold water.
Wow.
um, and so, yeah, things changed, and coming here was definitely an opportunity for my family to find, to actually chase that American dream and what that was like. And that's really been very alive in me ever since coming here in 91 and just doing what I can, and which was, educating myself and taking my family to a whole new level and a whole new level of economic wealth and that I was able to create myself.
Wow, that's an inspiring story. What was your English like when you came here, Monica?
I studied British English in Poland for a few years. So I would say, how do you do? Instead of how are you? And I was really confused why people had that look on their faces, because I didn't understand that there were differences between British English and American English. No one really taught you that, and my vocabulary was really limited. So it took quite a few years for me to learn the English language more perfectly. I still have an accent. You might still hear me say things differently. I forget words, so depending on the day, that is an experience. But that was actually a difficult journey, very very challenging, especially when you think about. I was a teenager when I came here, and I was expected out of to perform, to have good grades, to bring home A's. Like there was no other grade in my family than having the best grade. And then you go to school and you completely don't understand anything that's being said to you. You kind of know what they're talking about because you know the material. I feel like the education system, even in communist Poland, was pretty advanced. So we studied really a lot of different things that I didn't touch until later in high school. So at least I have a little bit of an advantage of the level of what I've known, but then I couldn't really express it, right? English as was in literature was really hard. But I managed. That made me more resilient, and that's I think what matters at the end of the day.
Yes, so very, very true. And it sounds like you had what I would call the typical immigrant experience and children's of immigrant experience, that there's high expectations put on you, certainly academically, as you described.
Absolutely.
Were your parents professionals? What was their level of education as they came to the States, and what were they able to do professionally? Just to give me a sense of what the household was like when you were a teenager.
My parents had more of a vocational jobs, and I would call them they're entrepreneurs when they
Oh, I
came
love
here.
that. Yes.
So, more service jobs. They started working for somebody else and then they would start their own businesses. And I think that's a very inspiring story about many immigrants that, they might start off in one way, but then they quickly understand the potential of what they can create, and having their own business is the way to go. So I actually almost was very inspired by that. Like, you did not speak any English. I was the one that translated. I handled your business problems. I was the grown up in the family, even though I was, 14, because I still understood more English than they did. And they already were trying to create, and hire people and have their own businesses and kind of keep things going and growing for themselves, because they saw that there's so much opportunity here and they knew how to like tap into that. And maybe it was also a matter of, okay, I can either work for somebody, or a better choice is to start my own business. And they had enough courage to step into that calling and did that. And I didn't do that until my 40s, and having a lot more business acumen experience. So I just really want to give and a lot of people in my immediate circle are like that. Most people say we didn't know what it was like. We didn't know any other paths. So that's what they did, but they made something great out of it. So a lot of my friends have very profitable and successful businesses and, doing all kinds of different things. But um well, now that I asked them if you would be able to change, they're like, no, this is kind of who I am and this is what I do. So that's been kind of who I've been surrounded with and growing up with.
I love that you've used the words courage and resilience. And so to be surrounded by people that have those characteristics is certainly must have been a benefit to you. I also want to recognize, as you said, you were almost forced to be mature beyond your years. I taught a financial literacy course in I think it was middle school in Astoria, Queens. And I remember how involved a lot of the students were, because they were the ones, helping their parents interpret bills and pay the checks and make phone calls on behalf of their parents. So really, had I been teaching the same class, let's say where I live in Westchester County in New York, I'm sure it wouldn't have been received the same way, but there was a level of maturity that was demanded of again, children of first generation immigrants. And it sounds like, Monica, you stepped up to that role and took it on. So I'm curious how that influenced your path. Did what you wanted to be when you grew up, when you were in high school?
I think I've really struggled with that question for a very long time. Even starting at the university, I studied at University of Illinois. I was undecided for the longest time. And I finally like, okay, I got to make a decision. I'm a sophomore. I have to choose something. Um, I've always had difficulties landing on something because I've felt that I was really talented in many areas, that I could have done a lot of things. And I think they've made things much more difficult for me. But I finally settled. So I've went into what's called information science degree, I think, manage it's basically a degree that I can't remember, right? Can't
What was
remember
it
right now,
called?
but it's
Yeah.
basic degree between technology and business. And that actually was a good call because I was graduating around year 2000. And that's when a lot of the technology skills were needed to help us get through Y2K. I don't know if the audience still remembers those days when we were afraid
Yeah.
that the plants will stop working and we might not have power. And, we didn't know what's going to happen through the Y2K cut over to that year. So I started in my professional world as a technologist, as a developer actually. And that's kind of how I kind of kicked off. This was my kind of first days in consulting, being more of a technical person, application development person. So that's what I did. But it had nothing to do with my past. It's just what was hot, and you kind of have to think about where things are going. And I guess my internal voice led me to be where I needed to be, even though I didn't know where that was taking me. But I think that was a good choice. It was a
Yes.
fun career, and I've done a lot with it.
I'm curious if, again, English not being your first language, was that what drew you also to technical as opposed to sort of language-based work, or is it also something that in general you were drawn to?
Um, I think it was more kind of feeling where we were going. Like if you fast forward now to 2025, technology is definitely at the forefront of everything that we're doing. So
Yeah.
it become really big and ingrained. So I almost feel like that calling to that career was in alignment to where the explosive growth can happen over the last, 25 years.
Right.
So I think it was more of that decision. I did have also felt that I should have gone into medicine. I really felt that that was something I would have been good at. And now thinking about being an intuitive coach and a healer really aligns very well with medical field because it really helps to connect the patient needs and where they're struggling and kind of bringing the mind body spirit connection and helping at the more intuitive level, but applying that to a job. That was one area that I thought was another potential that I didn't pursue because I didn't think I could learn the language, which of course wasn't true. It was the fear of speaking that stopped me from taking that path. But I was scared. Like I'm like, there's no way I can learn all those, all those new words. It was already so hard to get to where I was. But I think that that was one thing that if I could, I would have changed about myself. So about my future if I had that opportunity.
Thanks for sharing that. It does sound though that it was important for you to go into a field that would be, how do I put this, give you financial security. You were looking at what would have demand and
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I came in here and I remember the first shock. Everything was so big and beautiful. There were so many lights everywhere. I wanted a big house. I wanted, a nice car. I wanted to live in a certain neighborhood. I wanted to get out of where I was. There's nothing, I'm not looking down on where I was. I just wanted something bigger and better for myself. I wanted, a big house with 4 bathrooms and that's what was driving me and that I could do it. That kind of finding that inner motivation to figuring out a way with how do I apply my skills and like how do I break into this culture into into a career into a way of being successful that that maybe a different path wouldn't give me an opportunity to.
I love that. Sounds like you're a very directed young woman and you assessed your skills, what interested you, and what you saw was in demand, and you went after it.
Absolutely, thank you.
So 23 years is a long time. What did you enjoy about that time and what didn't you enjoy about that time?
I think the first several years of my career were more sort of like you were asked to do this and you went and did that, because when you're young, you typically just follow a certain career path and there's expectations. But as time progressed, I've kind of tapped into how to understanding that I got more opportunities of just bringing more of my own ideas, my own passions, and kind of looking ahead. So a lot of the roles, or some of the roles I had over the last 10 years were more focused on innovation. So really thinking about how we apply technology to today's problems, how do you leverage technology to help kind of humanity move forward in a new way. So I've definitely been on the forefront because this this career path I've been able to charter since about 2016, 17. Kind of doing a lot of new things, taking on projects that were the first, kind of having it was very courageous because
Yeah.
most people don't take the projects that have high potential of failure, but being able to like how do you operate around something that can fail and how do you make that success because it's the learning wasn't necessarily always that um, that you have a successful rollout. It's more about what we've learned from that specific engagement and how do we need to shape how we move forward so then we become even more successful. So it's that feedback loop, becoming iterative. It's not necessarily about becoming always 100% successful and delivering to the plan, but being able to work with it and with the challenges that are coming along the way when you actually are working on implementing new technologies for clients or for the company you're working for. Um, so I really love that career. That really jazzed me up.
Yeah.
I just loved working with people and kind of getting in their world to understand what they're struggling with and how their businesses can be impacted by the use of technology. So that's where the path of innovation. I've had that career for a few years. You know, driving and defining new business models. So thinking about, well, what is it that, what is new products or service I can deliver? So that was great. So how do you bring new business ideas to the table? And kind of doing things like that, imagining what is the next 3 years look like, right? The technology was evolving pretty quickly and a lot of large scale businesses are wanting to have a roadmap and a plan. So how do we help define what that looks like and where do we see and the change coming from? So that was certainly very exciting, very energizing career. Not always necessarily easy because nobody has the magic 8 ball to know where things will go and how things will work out. But it's more like how do we navigate and how do we drive value for customers at the end of the day? That really was kind of kept you engaged and kept you having purpose and driving that purpose for someone else as well.
You are not the sum of your earnings. You are the sum of your yearnings. If you're ready to use wealth to create more freedom and flexibility, let's align your finances with what matters most. Together, we'll build a plan that balances your scarce resources of energy, time, and money so you move forward with clarity, confidence, and less stress towards a life of true abundance. Learn more at www.trueabundanceadvisors.com and schedule a short conversation. Oh, I love it. And Monica, could you identify your skills that made you really suited for that role? Is it a level of creativity that's demanded, or being a good listener, or empathy? What do you see in yourself that,
I think back then, like even 5 years ago, very intuitive. So I would just really try to understand what people were looking for. It really comes down to that active listening, asking good questions, and putting yourselves in their shoes.
yeah,
Like sometimes people come in and think that, well, I need this technology, this platform, this solution. And it was more like, well, let's talk about what it is that you're actually trying to solve. Like what is the problem you're facing and like take it from that approach, like where's the breakdown, where's the where are the issues, and then from there when you understand what the problem is you can actually probably come up with different types of solutions, and sometimes that was what they wanted was the right solution, but sometimes it's just by having conversation with somebody that can like open their perspective to like, well, wait, like maybe there's a whole nother way to how I can solve this. And then just finding a voice and like if the idea and the path is completely different where they're at, so how do you communicate getting them on a different path? So that was maybe another challenge. I don't think I was as good at it back then as I am at it now, but just helping people see that maybe the path that they're taking is not the right one is definitely a skill that I've developed over the years that was is really needed in that profession.
Oh, I love that, and it so resonates, frankly, with what I do, because somebody may call and say, "Oh, I just received an inheritance, so how do I invest it?" And they think that, that's the problem and that's the solution. And it's developing relationship, learning about them, learning what's going on with their lives. And there may be something entirely different that they need help with, and an entirely and a different solution that will help. And so I love the way you articulated that. And it was also a great segue, as you named those skills, for what you're doing now. But so how did that develop from, I guess, the time that you were transitioned out of the work you were doing to what you're doing today?
Yeah, so last no 2 years ago almost, in 23, I've decided to pursue this coaching, intuitive coaching career path. But the way that happened was sort of life throwing me a curveball. So I work with for a large consulting company for 22 years, and then I decided to go work for startup. And because I wanted to try something different, I'm like, I've been at a big firm for a very long time. And even though I was always challenging myself and changing roles and doing different things, I still felt that there was a room for me to grow. And and so I just wanted to develop different skills, wanted to try different way of consulting. And it was very different going from a big firm to a small firm.
Yeah.
I spent about a year there, but that role didn't end up working out. So I lost that job in 23, and then I was faced with that choice. What do I do next? And sitting with this, and do I go back and do the same, or is there something else for me? So I went into that self inquiry, and the answer kept coming, into the coaching was the way to go. So I've decided to pursue that and went to get and gotten my certification. And that's kind of how this whole enterprise has started.
So can you be more specific about who you work with and the kind of coaching you do? I'll give the background that I interview quite a few people that self-identify as coaches. Um, on this podcast. And of course, everyone has a different personality, but more than that, there is really different kind of coaching for C-suite executives, for stay-at-home moms developing a business. I mean, there's a whole range of demographics and psychographics a coach might work with. So, who do you work with?
Yeah, great question. So initially I started thinking that I'll just do what I used to do. It's just, my audience now becomes my friends or my clients or that demographic. So just go in and do career coaching, right? So that was my initial plan. And after taking some classes, and this is a funny